We'll get through this today.
Do you have a page number?
775 in the, what is this, 8th edition of Bevington? 7th edition of Bevington. So, we finished Act 4 with the king being, the ex-king, but he's still called King Richard, being conveyed to the Tower. And Act 5, Scene 1, enters with the queen and her ladies and stuff, and then Richard is led in by a guard. And Richard speaks to them, and he finishes his speech with talking to his wife. Hie thee to France, line 22. Hie thee to France, and cloister thee in some religious house. Our holy lives must win a new world's crown, which our profane hours here have thrown down. Okay? So, holy lives, new world's crown, new crown in heaven, because the crown down here is what? Is my Richard both in shape and mind, transformed and weakened? Hath Bolingbroke deposed thine intellect? Hath he been in thy heart? The lion dying thrusteth forth his paw and wounds the earth, if nothing else, with rage to be overpowered. You know, if you're familiar with Dylan Thomas's Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night, that's kind of what she's saying. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Be like the lion in its dying breath. Does what? Scratches at the earth to try to overcome. Okay? And wilt thou pupil like? So Bolingbroke would be your teacher, and you would be like the dutiful pupil. There aren't any of those anymore. Take the correction, mildly kiss the rod, and fawn on rage with base humility, which art a lion and the king of beasts. What is her whole point? What does she want her husband to do? Fight. What did what did York's wife want him to do for the death of his brother? Fight. Notice how the women seem to be stronger, in some of the cases at least, than the men. Fight for what's yours. Okay? We're going to see that in other plays, by the way. Richard. Yeah, a king of beasts. If aught but beast, I had been still a happy king of men. That is, if my subjects were but beasts, then I would still be a happy king of men, because I would have control over them. I think this is a biblical echo, not an illusion, an echo. What did God tell Adam? Rule over the beasts. Okay, thou shalt have dominion over them. He's kind of echoing that language. But good sometimes queen. Sometimes you were, but you're not anymore. Go to France. Why? I'm going somewhere else. Okay? So he says, and while in France, in winter's tedious night, sit by the fire with the good old folks, and let them tell thee tales of woeful ages long ago betide, or betid. So, while away the hours, thinking of what? We still do it. The good old days. You guys don't remember the good old days. You're not old enough, most of you. I remember the good old days when, I'll go off on a tangent for just briefly, when politics wasn't a blood sport. When there was still, some respect on either side for the other side. Okay? That is totally gone. And ere thou bid good night, to quit their griefs, tell thou, that is, thou tell, the lamentable tale of me. Tell the good old folks that you are with my lamentable tale, and send the hearers weeping to their beds. For why the senseless brands will sympathize the heavy accent of thy moving tongue, and in compassion weep the fire out. And some will mourn in ashes, some coal black, for the deposing of a rightful king. Now, notice his language here. That's moving. That is beautiful. That is poetic. And he's saying, why is the tale lamentable? For the deposing of a rightful king. Okay? Northumberland comes in. No, you're not going to the Tower. Instead, we're going to take you over Pomfret. Okay? And you, madam, you're going off to France. Listen to Richard's speech to Northumberland. Northumberland, thou ladder wherewithal the mounting Bolingbroke ascends my throne. And I think he uses ladder for two reasons. One, very literally, Bolingbroke climbed up upon you to reach my throne. He's saying, without Northumberland, Bolingbroke never could have gotten the kingship. But I think he's also using ladder because of the sound. Take the L off. Adder. Poisonous snake. He's kind of suggesting, you're like a snake in the grass. Okay? The time shall not be many hours of age, more than it is ere foul sin, the gathering head, shall break into corruption. It's not going to be long before there will be problems, you will think, with Bolingbroke as king. Thou shalt think, though he divide the realm and give thee half, even if he were to give you half the kingdom, it is too little. Why? Helping him to all. Richard's saying, you've got such an ambitious mind. You're going to think, Bolingbroke wouldn't be king if it weren't for me. He gave me half the kingdom. I should get more. Well, if he gets more, then Bolingbroke's not really king anymore, right? He shall think that thou. So notice, you're going to think, I didn't get enough. Bolingbroke's going to think that thou, which knowest the way to plant unrightful kings, wilt know again. In law, there is a principle called stare decisis. And that essentially means precedent rules. If the Supreme Court has established a precedent, if it has ruled one way, that judgment, essentially not only becomes the law of the land, but it now has the force in later years of precedent. It becomes harder to overturn. Doesn't mean they can't overturn it, right? Dred Scott decision was completely overturned. Why? Because it was a horrible precedent. Okay? So, he is saying, Bolingbroke's going to think what? Northumberland knew how to depose one king. He could do it again. See, what's happening with the current Supreme Court nomination isn't new. It's happened twice before. It hadn't happened before that first time in 1987. People had been voted down, but you hadn't had that kind of character assassination. That's what he's getting at. Okay? What's he planting in Northumberland's mind? Come on, your face tells me.
He could easily overturn.
Doubt. He's planting doubt in Northumberland's mind. You sure you did such a great thing? So, being ne'er so little urged another way to pluck him headlong from the usurped throne. That's what Bolingbroke's going to think. He can do it again, and he might try to remove me. The love of wicked men converts to fear, that fear to hate, and hate turns one or both to worthy danger and deserved death. One of you, or both of you, is going to go at the other, is what he's saying. May my guilt be on my head. Northumberland seems to be saying, I'm not guilty. And if I am, I will suffer for it. So, just hold that thought in your mind. Start reading Henry IV, Part 1. And see what Northumberland says then. Okay? So, the Queen says, no. Wherever you take the king, I'm going. Whither he goes, thither let me go. Now that, I think, is a biblical allusion to the book of Ruth, where Naomi says, whither thou goest, I will go. Okay? To her mother-in-law. 5:2. We have the Duke of York and the Duchess come in. Okay? Their son is whom? Almeril. Okay? So, the Duchess wants to know, how'd Richard act? What did it look like? And York gives us the speech, beginning line 23. As in a theater, the eyes of men, after a well-graced actor leaves the stage, are idly bent on him that enters next, thinking his prattle to be tedious, even so, or with much more contempt, men's eyes did scowl on gentle Richard. In other words, Richard wasn't like the well-graced actor. Richard was like the prattling idiot who came in. No man cried, God save him. Notice even York, who joined Northumberland / Bolingbroke's side at the end, calls him gentle Richard. No joyful tongue gave him his welcome home. This is when they arrived into London. He didn't have crowds cheering him. Okay? No joyful tongue gave him his welcome home, but dust was thrown upon his sacred head, which with such gentle sorrow he shook off, his face still combating with tears and smiles the badges of his grief and patience. This isn't a triumphal entry. This isn't like Christ entering Jerusalem, two hosannas. This is the way a criminal enters. People throwing dirt at him. The badges of his grief and patience, that had not God for some strong purpose steeled the hearts of men, they must perforce have melted. God hardened the people's hearts. Otherwise, by seeing Richard like this, he says they would have what? If their hearts would have melted, what would they physically have done? Boom, fallen on their knees in front of him. And barbarism itself had pitied him. But heaven hath a hand in these events. Okay? York is saying this isn't entirely just Bolingbroke et al.'s movement. God is at work in all of this. Does he explain exactly how? Does God want Bolingbroke to depose his duly appointed representative? But heaven hath a hand in these events, to whose high will we bound our calm contents. Okay, you got a gloss there, line 38. We bind ourselves to be calmly content. Does that mean we, York et al., understand it? No. When St. Paul says, be content in all things, does he mean, therefore, understand all things? No. He means, accept it ultimately as coming from God, and God knows what's best. Go back to that Boethius. I think I did it this class. Boethius. The eye that sees everything, boom, now. And orders everything according to that vision of now. Okay? To Bolingbroke are we sworn subjects now, who state and honor eye for eye allow. That is, eye for yes, allow. I'm going to now swear allegiance to Bolingbroke. Okay? Merrill comes in. And he's got a look. He should have kind of a look on his face, kind of twitchy. Like something's going on. And York wants to know, what are you doing? What you been up to? What news from Oxford, etc.? Jousts and triumphs and such. And Merrill, I don't really know. Well, you were there. Well, yeah, okay. So, whose seal is that? What seal is that hangs without thy bosom? That is, Omeril has a piece of fabric, a piece of paper, sticking outside his doublet, which isn't all the way buttoned up. And York sees a seal. So this is a sealed letter. Tis nothing. Well, then, no matter then who see it. Well, if it's nothing, then show it to me. Shakespeare loves this trope, by the way. He's going to do the same thing in King Lear. Okay? I will be satisfied. Let me see the writing. It's a matter of small consequence, which for some reasons I would not have seen. Dad, it's personal. No, I'm going to see it. And so he rips it out of his bosom. And he looks at it. And all we're told is treason, foul treason, villain, traitor, slave. What's the problem with York saying that?
Technically, he's committed treason.
It's his kid, louder.
Technically, he's committed treason as well.
Yeah, went down the wrong way. Yeah, it's what Bolingbroke's done. Treason, foul treason, by deposing a king. So, there's a serving man. York hasn't saddled his horse, and he heads off, okay? He's heading off to the palace to tell the king, okay? The Duchess says to Omeril, beat him. Not beat your father, kill him. Arrive before him. Beg mercy, okay? She says, before that, line 95, York replying, because she asks, 88, why, York, what wilt thou do? This is his son, remember. What wilt thou do? Wilt thou not hide the trespass of thine own? Won't you cover up your son's sin? Have we more sons? It's rhetorical, no. Or are we like to have? Remember, how old is they're too old to have children. Is not my teeming date drunk up with time? My teeming date drunk up with time. What is she saying? She's older than dirt. Her death is coming. Right? And wilt thou pluck my fair son from mine age and rob me of a happy mother's name? Is he not like thee? Is he not thine own? Thou fond there means foolish. It doesn't mean affectionate, like, oh, I'm fond of something. Mad woman. Mad means crazy, not angry. Wilt thou conceal this dark conspiracy? Well, she doesn't know what the conspiracy is yet, because she hasn't read the letter. A dozen of them here, so he tells us, here have taken the sacrament, communion, the Eucharist, and interchangeably set down their hands to kill the king at Oxford. Okay, now think about that for a moment. They've taken communion, body and blood of Christ, eaten drunk, and plotted to kill the king. There's a problem with that. That's, not the right way to do things. You take the Eucharist and then you swear to serve the king, long live the king, etc. Okay? She says, well, he won't be involved. We'll keep him here. We won't let him go. You don't get it. So, that's when she tells her son, ride. Get to the king before him, and beg thy pardon ere he do accuse thee. She goes, and I'll be coming after you, son. 5-3, Henry. Now this is an important little speech. It's barely 10 lines long. But it sets up Henry IV, the next two plays. Okay? Because without this, we don't know anything about the king's eldest son's behavior or character. Can no man tell me of my unthrifty son? Gloss. Unthrifty. Profligate. Thrifty can mean cheap. unthrifty, uncheap. He's a wastrel. He's a spender. You could even use, and I think it's entirely appropriate within the context of these plays, prodigal. Okay? Because Harry / Hal, who will become Henry V, is the quintessential prodigal son. Can no man tell me of my unthrifty son? 'Tis full 3 months since I did see him last. The king hasn't seen him for 3 months. Where's he been? Why wasn't he there to help depose Richard? Why wasn't he there when Richard got back from Ireland? Because apparently he wasn't. If any plague hang over us, 'tis he. If there is any plague that will trouble us in 2 ways, specific and general. In general, England, specifically me and my kingship, it's my son. I would to God, my lords, he might be found. Inquire at London. Why? Amongst the taverns there. For there, they say, he daily doth frequent with unrestrained loose companions, even such, they say, as stand in narrow lanes, and beat our watch. Our watch, that's the night watch, cops. So, Hal and his friends stand lying in wait on darkened street corners in London for the night watch to come by, and then they beat them up. This is the now future king. And rob our passengers. So they beat up the cops and they rob people on the highway, the road, not our kind of highway. While he, young, wanton, and effeminate boy, wanton, pampered youth, effeminate, self-indulgent, okay? Doesn't mean he's gay or anything like that. Does what? Takes on the point of honor to support so dissolute a crew. He makes it a point of honor to support his crew, modern English. Percy. Now who's Percy? Harry Percy, Northumberland's son, nicknamed, not in this play, but in the next play, Hotspur. My lord, some 2 days since I saw the prince, and told him of these triumphs held at Oxford. And what said the gallant? His answer was he would unto the stews, that's the brothels, the whorehouses. Yea, dead. I'm going to go find a whore. And from the commonest creature pluck a glove, commonest, the most promiscuous, the most famous whore in the whorehouse, pluck a glove and wear it as a favor. Okay, now Shakespeare's playing on medieval notions of honor here, where a knight, sometimes, before he would go joust in a battle, his lady would give him a favor. If you've ever seen The Knight's Tale, or A Knight's Tale, you've seen this in the characters, and you have the actress Shannon Sosaman, I can't remember what her name is in the thing, she drops her handkerchief, and they pick it up, okay, and they wear that as an emblem, as a badge. They are jousting for that person. So, Hal, as he's also called, is going to do what? He's going to wear the glove of the greatest whore in London as his emblem. And with that, he would unhorse the lustiest challenger. As dissolute as desperate. Yet through both, I see some sparks of better hope. In other words, Henry Bolingbroke tells us here, and yet there's something there. But he doesn't know what yet, right? So, Merrill comes in, okay? And Merrill says, I need to talk to you alone. So he tells the others to leave. And Merrill bows to him and says, I need clemency before I tell you what I need clemency for. Forever my knees grow to the earth, my tongue cleave to the roof within my mouth, unless a pardon ere I rise or speak. I need this pardon before I get up or before I speak. Intended or committed was this fault? That is, was the thing that you're seeking pardon for merely a thought, or has it been fulfilled? Have you carried it out? So, come on, answer. If on the first, how heinous ere it be, if it was intended to win thy afterlove, I pardon thee. If you only intended it. Whew. Okay, lock the door, don't let anybody in. King says, okay. So Omero locks the door. So now who's alone in this room? Just the king and Omero. What did York discover Omero had plotted to do? Kill the king. He's got his opportunity. Right? I mean, you're seeing this for the first time. You've heard York. You think he's got his opportunity here. York starts banging on the door. King Henry draws because York says, thou hast a traitor in thy presence. Now, drawing doesn't mean, Henry pulls out a whiteboard and starts, flowers and whips his sword out. Okay? Stay thy revengeful hand, thou hast no cause to fear. So, York comes in. And he gives Henry the letter. Omero, remember as I reach thy promise past. You promised me what? Pardon. For what? For my intended harm. Has the harm been carried out? Obviously not. Okay? Henry, O heinous, strong, and bold conspiracy, O loyal father, York, of a treacherous son, thou sheer, immaculate, and silver fountain from whence this stream through muddy passages hath held his current and defiled himself. Thy overflow of good converts to bad. So, praising York up one side, down the other, and castigating his rotten, foul, dirty son. Okay? He says, don't worry, I've forgiven you. Line 83, York. If thou do pardon whosoever pray, okay, so if you're going to pardon whoever prays to you, more sins for this forgiveness prosper may. This festered joint cut off, the rest rest sound. This let alone will all the rest confound. Okay? So the king appeals, the duchess appeals to the king. They both kneel. Okay? And the king says, skipping a bunch, line 129. Good aunt, stand up. She says, I do not sue to stand. That is, I'm not here begging you so that I could stand. Pardon is all the suit I have in hand. I pardon him, as God shall pardon me. What is that? If you forgive others, you will be forgiven. Okay? Forgive your trespassers so that, oh, happy vantage of a kneeling knee, yet am I sick for fear. In other words, she's like, I'm not sure I heard you right. Say it again. Speak it again. Twice saying pardon doth not pardon twain, but makes one pardon strong. With all my heart, I pardon him. They all rise. A God on earth thou art. Why? Because what has he just shown?
Mercy.
Great mercy. Yeah, but mercy. But for our trusty brother-in-law and the abbot, that is, I pardon Omero. But the other 11? Because 12 swore to do this. The other 11, they're toast. Okay? Destruction straight shall dog them at the heels. Okay? 5-4. Let me go back. Destruction straight shall dog them at the heels. Good uncle, help to order several powers to Oxford, or wherever these traitors are. They shall not live within this world, I swear, but I will have them, if I once know where. Okay? So, 5-4. Exton comes in. Didst thou not mark the king what words he spake? Quote, have I no friend will rid me of this living fear? Was it not so? Where? Where did Henry say that? Where did the king, Henry, say that? Because if you go back through the rest of Act 5, which is when he's king, you won't find it. Okay? These were his very words. Who is that an echo of? Henry II said something similar to that about Thomas Becket, Archbishop of Canterbury. Will no one rid me of this meddlesome priest? He apparently said in a drunken rage on December 26th, 1189. And 3 of his knights leave London, ride to Canterbury, and on December 29th, they kill Thomas of Becket while he's praying at the altar. Because word reaches him, so he goes to the cathedral, and he stands at the altar and prays, and they slay him on the altar. Okay? Have I no friend will rid me of this living fear? Why is he a living fear?
He's alive. Dead.
Okay, keep going.
As long as he's alive, people can rise up and try and make him king.
You know, when Pope Benedict XVI retired and became Pope Emeritus, I'm not Catholic, but that had never been done before. Popes, until then, didn't retire. They died. They died in office. Or they were removed because, they'd gone loco. They no longer had their mental faculties. Okay? And one of the big questions after that was, okay, so what does that do for the new Pope? Because you got Benedict. And before he was Benedict, I'm trying to remember what his other name was. Archbishop from Germany. The guy was known as an intellectual powerhouse, just a giant. And the question was, well, what's the new Pope going to do when you've got this other Pope who's emeritus, not doing anything, living in a monastery? Just, people are going to say, well, what does he think? And interestingly, Benedict hasn't said squat since he retired, became emeritus, etc. Okay? So, the man says, yep, those were his words. Exton, have I no friend? What's Exton thinking? If I rid the king of this living fear, then I will become what? I will become his friend. And if you become the friend of a king, what does that mean? Yeah, power and money. Okay? So, he says, I am the king's friend, and I will rid his foe. Richard comes in, 5'5", alone, big long speech if you want one to memorize, 66 lines. I'm not going to read all of this, but he says, let's see here. Line 6. My brain I'll prove the female to my soul. Okay? So I'm going to prove my brain to be the female to my soul. He's playing on this notion that the soul that is masculine. And what does it do? It prints on something else. Here, on the brain. He's going to let his brain listen to his soul. His soul will take precedence. Okay? My soul, the Father, and these two, my soul, my brain, will beget what? A generation of still breeding thoughts. Constantly breeding. Teeming thoughts. And one thought will do what? It will beget another thought. Okay? And these same thoughts will people this little world. What's this little world? Your gloss tells you himself in his prison, which is a microcosm of the bigger world. Because in the room of the prison, what can Richard still consider himself to be? King. Hamlet famously says, "Oh, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space, were it not for I have bad dreams." And then he goes on about that. So, in humors like the people of this world, for no thought is contented. The better sort of thoughts, as thoughts of things divine, are intermixed with scruples, and to set the word itself against the word, as thus: "Come, little ones." And then again, "It is as hard to come as for a camel to thread the postern of a small needle's eye." Well, that's Christ talking about the rich man. It's easier for what? Camel to pass through a needle's eye than for a rich man to enter heaven. He's talking about humility. What kind of humility does Richard have here? It's forced. Is Richard a naturally humble person? No, pretty clearly not. So, thoughts tending to ambition, they do plot unlikely wonders. How these vain weak nails may tear a passage through the flinty ribs of this hard world, my ragged prison walls. Thoughts tending to ambition, ambitious thoughts say what? I could use my bare hands and tear through the walls of this prison. The walls are made of stone. Theoretically, yeah, you could. You could wear through, it might take a long time, but might tear a passage through the flinty ribs of this hard world, my ragged prison walls, and for they cannot, because they cannot, die in their own pride. Now, isn't it good for prideful thoughts to die before one dies? Thoughts tending to content flatter themselves that they are not the first of fortune's slaves, nor shall not be the last. Like seely is another word that means foolish. Like seely beggars who sitting in the stocks refuge their shame that many have and others must sit there. That is, people who are in the stocks take comfort how? Well, I'm not the only one who's ever sat in the stocks. And I'm not the only one right now sitting in the stocks. In other words, misery loves company. And in this thought they find a kind of ease, bearing their own misfortunes on the back of such as have before endured the like. Part of what he's getting at is, it's easier to bear our own troubles and misfortunes when we think that other people have had to bear their own misfortunes and troubles. What's the problem with that thought specifically for Richard? No other king has been deposed before. Okay? So, thus play I, notice the idea of acting, in one person many people and none contented. I'm not contented being one of the lowlifes. I'm not contented being one of the people in the stocks. I'm not contented with ambitious thoughts. In other words, he is not content in all things. He's content in nothing. Sometimes am I king, then treason makes me wish myself a beggar. And so am I. So I am. Then crushing penury persuades me I was better when a king. Crushing penury, dirt poor, makes me think, I like being king better. Money's nice. Then am I kinged again in his thoughts, and by think that I am unking by Bolingbroke, and straight am nothing. But whate'er I be, nor I nor any man that but man is, with nothing shall be pleased, till he be eased with being nothing. What? Whate'er I be, whether I'm the lowliest subject or the king, nor I nor any man, the first nor neither, neither I nor any man that but man is, that is man, with nothing shall be pleased, till he be eased with being nothing. What is Richard saying? And notice, this applies to whom? All people. That's what the neither I nor any man that but man is.
People can never be happy until they can accept having nothing.
That's exactly it. Or maybe not happy, but content. He says, they shall be pleased with nothing. Nothing will satisfy them. Okay? Until what? Until he be eased with being nothing. I think I said this last time we met. How does Sophocles end Oedipus the King? I think it's the chorus says. It's either the chorus or Oedipus says. It's chorus. Count no man blessed till he is dead. Okay? You can't be pleased with anything until you are nothing. That's a pretty powerful idea. And Shakespeare, I mean, he says that, and that's for the audience to hear. Okay? Keep in mind, who comprises the audience? Both the poorest of the poor and the wealthiest members of London society. There was even a special box for the royalty, for the queen. Okay? He hears music. And he says, how sour sweet music is when time is broken, no proportion kept. Notice, how sour, sweet, good, beautiful music. Pick your beautiful music. And he says, but it doesn't what? It doesn't please. If what? When time is broke and no proportion kept. Time. His time. His time's broke. What does Richard apparently know or surmise? Yeah. He's not just being deposed. Okay? So is it in the music of men's lives. And here have I the daintiest of ear, to check time broke in a disordered string, but for the concord of my state and time, had not an ear to hear my true time broke. I wasted time. King Lear is going to say the exact same thing. Lear is going to say, I wasted time with pomp and ceremony, and he says this when he is out in the middle of the storm, and nobody will accept him into their home. And he extrapolates and thinks, well, yeah, but I was a king, but what about all those who never were king? What about all those who don't have a house to even go to? And he talks about the poor and the orphans and the widows. I wasted time, and now doth time waste me. He wasted time when? Go back to Acts 1 through 3, especially 1 and 2, where he uses the power that he has for what? For himself, for his flatterers. Why does he pay off? Why does he support his flatterers? Because they make him feel good. For now hath time made me his numbering clock. My thoughts are minutes, and with sighs they jar their watches on unto mine eyes. Not watches like this, watches like the 8-hour watch or the 10th hour watch. The outward watch whereto my finger like a dial's point is pointing still and cleansing them from tears. Now, sir, the sounds that tell what hour it is are clamorous grounds that strike upon my heart, which is the bell. I never noticed this before. Damn, Shakespeare was a genius. John Donne famously asks in Meditation 17, those of you who are in my Brit Lit 1 class, you're going to get this again. Ask not. How's the rest of it go? Anybody know? For whom, literally, it's plural, the bells tolls. It tolls for thee. Richard has just said, notice, the sounds that tell what hour it is are clamorous groans that strike upon my heart, which is the bell. He's talking about the tolling bell, not just like the bell that is in the tower outside Houses of Parliament, Big Ben. Big Ben's the name of the clock. It's not the name of the bell. Okay? I don't remember what the bell has a name. I don't remember what it is. Okay? In British custom, when somebody dies, the church bell in the parish that they belong to rings. If it's a man that dies, it rings 9 times. If it's a woman that dies, it rings 8 times. Not because a man is worth 1/9 more than a woman. It's just to signify the difference. Okay? So it rings 9 or 8 times, then there's a pause, and then it rings out once for every year the person lived. Now this isn't done anymore in London. But if you go off into a small town, 500,000 people, okay, in England, it is often still done. So, ask not for whom the bells tolls. Ask not who the bell's ringing is indicating is dying. Donne says it tolls for you. Why? Because in that meditation, he wants everybody to think, you hear that tolling bell? What should it serve as?
A reminder.
A memento mori. Reminder of death. Yeah.
What's up with the 2 plural bells?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't remember. There is some reason for it, but I don't remember what it is. Okay. So, he says, his heart is the bell, so sighs and tears and groans show minutes, hours, and times. Sighs and tears and groans, boom, boom. But my time runs posting on of Bolingbroke's proud joy while I stand fooling here, his jack of the clock. So, the groom of the stable comes in. He talks to the king. Richard, just before the end of that scene, Exton comes in. And Richard says, how now, what means death in this rude assault? Villain, thy own hand yields thy death's instrument. He snatches a weapon from a man and kills him. This shows us what about Richard?
He's not going down easy.
He's not going to be the passive suffering, No. Go thou and fill another room in hell. Ugh, kills another one. Why in hell? How dare you raise your hand against the king? Okay. Here, Exton strikes him down. That hand shall burn in never-quenching fire that staggers thus my person. And if this were Bottom, he would say, my royal person, but he doesn't. So. Exton, thy fierce hand hath with the king's blood stained the king's own land. The king's blood, mine, stained the king's own land. I think 2 King, he's talking about Henry. He's saying, you've just ensured what? He will not have a peaceful reign. And he dies. Okay? So Exton says, as full of valor as a royal blood, both have I spilled. Oh, would the deed were good. Exton at that point is kind of like Judas. Oops. Oops is too late. For now the devil that told me I did well says that this deed is chronicled in hell. Chronicled means it's remembered. It won't be forgotten. This dead king to the living king I'll bear. Take hence the rest and give them burial here. Okay? So, for now the devil that told me I did well. Could that be a very subtle insinuation about, will no friend rid me of this living fear? About Bolingbroke or King Henry? I'm not saying it is. I'm just raising that question. So, enter Bolingbroke, notice, as king with the Duke of York and other lords. So, he says, what's the news, York? Is that the rebels have consumed with fire our town of Chichester and Gloucestershire? But whether they be ta'en or slain, I don't know. Okay, Northumberland comes in. Northumberland says, I have sent to London the heads of Salisbury, Spencer, Blunt, and Kent. Okay, he means that literally. He hasn't sent Salisbury, Spencer, Blunt, and Kent. He's just sent their heads. Why? To be put on the pikes at the gate for the Tower of London. Or to be put on the pikes that line London Bridge. So that people going up and down the Thames would always see it, or so that people walking across London Bridge to Southwark would see it. Okay? Henry, we thank thee, gentle Percy, for thy pains. Notice he calls Northumberland here Percy. Why? Because he is Percy. And Harry Percy, Hotspur, his son, is also Percy. Same last name. If you ever get a chance, by the way, to go to England, go to Alnwick Castle. Northeast coast. It's pronounced like this. Alnwick. Northeast coast. It's about an hour from Edinburgh. It takes about 3.5, 4 hours, depending on which train you take out of London, to get up there. That's the Northumberland ancestral home. The Duke of Northumberland still lives there today. It's the second largest, longest inhabited castle in England. The only one that is larger and has been inhabited longer is Windsor. This was used for several of the Harry Potter sites. So when I do my Harry Potter course in London, used to do my Harry Potter course in London, we'd go up there. It's a fantastic castle. It's the cool thing about it is you go into the Duke's library, and if you're a bibliophile like me, your jaw drops and you slobber all over. And then you see the Duke's table where he works when he's there, and family pictures and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, it's huge. It's beautiful. So, Fitzwater comes in and says, I've sent the heads of Brocas and Sir Bennet Seeley from Oxford. He says, thank you, Fitzwater. Percy comes in. Henry Percy, the younger Percy, comes in with the Bishop of Carlisle. It says, the Grand Conspirator Abbot of Westminster with clog of conscience, sour melancholy, hath yielded up his body to the grave. I doubt that he did that willingly. And there's Carlisle. Okay. Henry says, Carlisle, this is your doom. Choose out some secret place, some reverent room, more than thou hast, and with it joy thy life. So as thou livest in peace, die free from strife. Go someplace that you want, and we will let you live there in peace the rest of your life. Okay? Exton comes in with others bearing the coffin with Richard's body. Great King, within this coffin I present thy buried fear. Herein all breathless lies the mightiest of thy greatest enemies. Okay, that's the rhyme. Richard of Bordeaux, by me hither brought. Exton, I thank thee not, for thou hast wrought a deed of slander with thy fatal hand upon my head and all this famous land. Line 35. A deed sure to arouse slanderous talk about the new king. What would the slanderous talk be? That he ordered it. So, if the king says that would be slanderous talk, did the king say, will no friend rid me of this fear, this living fear? I mean, if it really is slanderous, then he didn't say it. Okay? From your own mouth, Lord, I did this deed. I heard you say, they love not poison that do poison need, nor do I thee. Though I did wish him dead, I hate the murderer, love him murdered. Yeah, I wanted him dead, but I didn't really want him dead. That's what Henry means. Okay? The guilt of conscience take thou for thy labor, but neither my good word nor princely favor. With Cain, go wander through the shades of night, and never show thy head by day nor light. What does that mean? You're banished, exiled. Lords, I protest my soul is full of woe, that blood should sprinkle me to make me grow. Come mourn with me for what I do lament, and put on sullen black incontinent. I'll make a voyage to the Holy Land. Okay? So he's going to put on mourning clothes. They're going to go to the Holy Land. Why? To wash this blood from off my guilty hand. Whose guilty hand? Mine. Henry is saying, I am responsible for this. March sadly after, grace my mornings here, in weeping after this untimely. Notice that idea again. Beer. If Shakespeare can work on the theme of time, if he can play with the theme of time, he will. It's one of his major topics, let's say. He loves to play with time, appearances versus reality. Okay. We'll see this in others. Spying, sight. They're like ideas that he repeatedly comes back to. All right. Okay, we will stop there. Like I said, Thursday, as of right now, we will not meet. I will post a video for the first 2 or 3 acts of Henry IV, Part 1. Check your email Wednesday night. If my surgery time changes to the afternoon, then we will have class Thursday morning.
What do we read for Thursday?
Henry IV, Part 1. Have Henry IV, Part 1 done for Tuesday. Okay? So I would read first 2 or 3 acts and then finish it over the weekend. You'll like it if you've never read it before. And if I can figure out if I have time, I'll try